Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the NABJ Academic Task Force Forum called Thinking of Teaching. Here's what you need to know on how to transition from the newsroom to the classroom. My name is Wayne Dawkins. I teach multimedia journalism at Morgan State University. I will be co-moderating today's discussion with an outstanding team of academic panelists. And before I go any further, I'd like to give a special thanks to Jared Henderson, our NABJ board representative, who arranged this opportunity for all of us. So thank you, Jared.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I'll be introducing my talented friends in a moment, but I want to review the agenda for this session. There will be the brief introductions, of course, how to get started teaching, things we wish someone had told us before we started teaching, research, innovation opportunities, and a, and a major secret about academia. And then Q&A, hint, hint, audience. We want you to make this as interactive as possible. I'm going to take moderator's privilege, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge one of our dear and now departed colleagues, Karen Collins, who I knew for many years when I worked in New Jersey, and we had a dynamic NABJ chapter, the Garden State Association of Black Journalists. She was a journalist at the Asbury Park Press. She transitioned out of journalism. She transitioned seamlessly, I might add, to academia as the media was changing, and she was teaching at Bloomfield College or University. She was also running the Hugh Boyd journalism program for students. Just an amazing, beloved colleague. She died this week. She left us way too young. Beloved by members of the NABJ Arts and Entertainment Task Force. She's a Howard alum, and I know I've taught many HBCU alums like her. Just rest in peace, Karen Collins. And I just wanted to say that. Okay, on to introductions. Dana Say is a full instructor in the communication department at the University of Louisville. She started as an adjunct professor at different colleges and at the University of Louisville, teaching various study, skill, leveling, and orientation courses. Say later began teaching regularly in the communication department at the U of L, eventually becoming full-time, where she has been teaching for over 10 years. Dana Say also serves her community in roles to include activism, as well as host The Reset with Dana Say on envisionradio.com. And that brings us to Michelle Johnson. She is an associate professor of practice in multimedia journalism at Boston University. She served as the first academic representative on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists from 2016 to 2018. Johnson is a former editor at the Boston Globe and Boston.com. For more than 20 years, she has conducted training for professional and student journalists for a variety of organizations, including Society of Professional Journalists Google Initiative, the Maynard Institute, the Online News Association, NABJ, National Association of Hispanic Journalists, and the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association. Pay close attention to her, please. She's done a lot. At Boston University, Johnson oversees the award-winning student-run Boston University News Service.
Thank you very much, Professor Dawkins. Appreciate that introduction. And I'm also very happy to introduce you. As you know, we've known each other for quite a long time. So let me just say, for those of you who don't know him, Wayne Dawkins is professor of professional practice at Morgan State University, my mother's alma mater. Very proud. at the School of Global Journalism and Communication. He's been a full-time educator since 2005. Dawkins previously taught at Hampton University's Scripps Howard School of Journalism and Communication, where he made history as the first faculty member to advance from assistant to associate and then to full professor. That's quite an accomplishment. He is the author of 2 peer-reviewed academic press books. The first one is City Sun, Andrew W. Cooper in 2012, and the recently published Emmanuel Seller, which is published this month, is my understanding.
Yes.
Yeah, so before coming into academia, his professional career was spent at 4 newspapers in the Gannett, Knight Ridder, and Tribune Company chains. And he spent some time at 2 news services, including blackamericaweb.com.
Thank you,
welcome
Michelle.
to both of
Thank
my
you.
fellow panelists.
Yes, welcome to all of you. And okay, let's get started. So education is fundamental. So first question is for you, Michelle. How did you get started teaching?
Well, it's a long story, but let me just say, if anybody's interested in teaching, there's a couple of things they should keep in mind, whether they want to teach part-time or full-time, because there are a lot of people who get into this and keep their day job in the newsroom. They may teach one course like early in the morning or on evenings. And other folks it's like, okay, we're doing like the full-blown career transition. They want to get out of what they're doing and like come into the classroom full time. For me, it started with the adjunct part-time route. And the thing is, I would have never gone into teaching because my mother's a retired public school teacher and administrator. And I always said, I will never teach. It's too much work. So of course now she's laughing at me, but what happened was, because I'd done so much work with the student projects at NABJ and NAHJ and other organizations, I realized I really enjoyed working with young people and sort of, teaching them the ins and outs of, of journalism. And so a friend of mine said to me, you should really think about teaching. And my first response was, no way. And she just kind of hammered at me for probably a couple of years until they had an adjunct opening at BU. And she said, you got to come in, have lunch, we'll talk about this. So I decided to step into it, tentatively and just see what it was like, and discovered that I really loved it. I loved sharing stuff with the students and seeing the little light bulb go off over their head when they got it, and see them, do work that got published. It was pretty amazing. So I was actually an adjunct for a number of years before I even applied for a full-time position. Because I was doing other things. I got involved in digital early on. So I was, I helped launch the Boston Globe online. And then I went off to do some consulting and help, mostly nonprofit organizations get launched on the web. So, that was sort of my day gig. And then I was teaching periodically until, I was contacted about a full-time position at, first Emerson College in here in Boston. And then Boston University kind of stole me back, because I'd been adjunct there previously. So here I am 11 years later at BU, and actually looking at retirement in about 2 years, but it's been a really interesting ride. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Michelle. Dana, how did you find or get into teaching?
Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. I took a Dana route. I did not come into academia the traditional way, nor did I come from the newsroom. Actually, I started out in psychology, pursuing a degree in as a clinician, and decided that. But I've always known that I wanted to teach. And so then I had an opportunity. I was a Vista AmeriCorps volunteer for a couple of years. And after that, I ended up in finance. So I was actually a financial advisor, and I took that route for a while. And became in the course of moving up in that company, I started working in communication for that company. So I would do the communication, the marketing, and do all of that for the gentleman I was working for his firm. I began to get involved in communication that way. I did, when I was in undergrad, I was president of the Public Relations Society. And I also did some work with the Rotary as well. So I just kind of, my experiences were in communication from that area. And then I began to, I decided that while I was in finance, I said, well, when I retire, then I will start teaching. And in the course of that, I had an opportunity from a mentor to teach a class. It was an entry-level orientation course at the University of Louisville. And then that opened it up for me to teach at other schools as a part-time adjunct. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, too much to what Michelle said, I enjoyed seeing students light up. At the time I was teaching freshmen, so they are all excited, you know, about this is their first time, get away from home. And those that were staying local, even they were excited just about, you know, not having to be in high school anymore. So I did that. And then a friend of mine actually recommended me for a position in the communication department. And so my professors ended up being my colleagues. And so I have been in the department ever since, and I worked part-time. And to what Michelle again was saying, I worked in finance for a while, and then I decided to totally focus on teaching, going back to school and that kind of thing. And then I ended up being given the opportunity to go full-time. And so I've been full-time now for over 10 years in the communication department at the University of Louisville.
Okay. All righty. I had sent you a quick note. Can you take it from here? See it? You're muted again.
Sorry about that, folks. So Wayne, what about you? How did you end up getting involved, and how did you end up teaching?
Okay. The way this happened, the seed was planted at the very beginning of my career when I was working for Andy Cooper, that man I wrote for. Well, it turned out one of his colleagues was at the time the greatest investigative reporter in New York City, a man named Wayne Barrett, who is considered one of the 5 great Trump biographers. Well, I didn't know all that then, but I knew he was an amazing reporter. He taught at Columbia J School. So he took a liking to me and said I should go to Columbia, to the graduate school. And I was hesitant at first. I was saying, well, look, I have a undergraduate degree in journalism from Long Island University, and I'm trying to find a graduate degree in something else, although I kept applying to places and getting accepted and was not feeling it. And Barrett, with his very forceful way of talking, said, Wayne, you know what you want to do. You should get this graduate degree at Columbia, because he said, someday, long after you practice journalism, you may want to teach it. And long and behold, 20 some years, the opportunity presented itself. Now, I will say this, in applying and it was a case, I taught adjunct courses at 2 different colleges, a single course. Somebody reached out to me and said, could you pick up this course? But then Hampton University needed someone to pick up 3 of their courses that needed an instructor. And I was part of a full-time faculty in 2005. I like to tell the audience what's very critical: know how to get your transcript from your undergrad days, because folks in academia, administrators, they are going to be non-negotiable. They want to see a transcript to see if you are who you say you are, first of all. And then that brings us to, you'll need to have a good resume. I Many of you in this audience may be from the professional newsroom ranks trying to get in. So a good resume is fine. But once you get in the door, when you get hired, you'll have to learn how to put together a curriculum vitae, which, usually with a resume, they say, if you're young, keep it to 1 page only. If you're experienced, don't go beyond 2 pages. You want to make sure people know who you are quickly. But with a curriculum, a CV, they want to see everything. As one colleague said many years ago, trying to explain it, they said if you sneeze, you probably have to put it on the CV. She's being facetious, of course, but a curriculum vitae will have all of your education, all of the classes you teach, your written body of work. If you are in the more visual or video, all of that work needs to be there. And all of a lot of other stuff that I'm going to talk about when we talk about the little secret about academia. Okay, so thanks, Dana. Michelle, now please, this is important. Explain the academic pecking order, because rank matters in the academy.
It does, and it matters so much. I actually made some slides, so let me actually call these up on my screen here. Give me just 1 second. And this actually, it sort of, oh, wait a minute. It falls in the category of what I wish people had told me before I got into academia, because I kept hearing all these titles and had no idea what the heck they meant or who people were. So if you're going to apply for a job, you really should understand what you're applying for. So that's one reason to understand the ranks. So let's just start with faculty. We already mentioned adjuncts, part-timers who maybe have a day job, still in the industry. And also the disclaimer here is really important. Some of these titles are different depending on the institution. So in some places, there are people called lecturers who could be full-time, but they may also be sort of in the rank of adjunct, part-time. Generally, lecturers come in with, professional experience and maybe not as much teaching experience sometimes. Now, then there's assistant professors who are considered junior faculty, who may be working toward a PhD or tenure. Or they may be PhD students. Then you've got folks at the assistant level, and that's what I personally am. An associate professor who's kind of mid-level, you may be known for something in your field. Some associate professors decide to pursue tenure. I have not, and we'll talk about that category in a minute. And usually you have a master's degree. I also went to the Columbia School of Graduate Journalism, and frankly had no idea that I would ever teach with it. I was basically looking to make some connections and get a job. It was not related to teaching whatsoever. And then sort of at the top of the list, you have the full professors these are folks who have been published, they do research, they may have written several books and journal articles, and they're highly accomplished. And generally, they are a PhD. But I will say that we have some full professors in my department who don't have PhDs. So again, it really depends on the institution.
Yes, and I want to add that many people in this audience have probably heard of Henry Louis Gates of Harvard University. Mm-hmm. He has a rare title. He is one of, I believe, at the time I knew about it, 18 professors at Harvard. He is at the rank of university professor. That is so rare. That just puts him in just another category, superhuman category. In my time at Hampton, we had 2 university professors. One of them was the former provost, and one of them was a Bush level cabinet member who joined the university and was named at the rank of university professor. It's sort of like being a 5-star general in the military.
Yeah, I don't live in those rarefied spaces myself.
Yeah.
And in fact, I don't think we have anybody in those verified spaces in my department.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that also, before you go a
Sure.
little bit on that, is,
Sure.
we've been taught much of the language that you all hear us speaking is university speak. But there's also the college level, community college level teaching that's also very rewarding. I've taught at that level, and the big difference that I found in that is teaching at the university level. Oftentimes your classes are much bigger. But at the more college level, community college level, you have smaller classes. You have students that you can really build close relationships with. You can do that at the university level as well, but it's just a different audience. But it definitely is very much a rewarding audience. And so when you're getting started, sometimes people want to go straight to the university and straight to some of these elite universities, and we'll be talking more about that later. But I did want to kind of inject that into the discussion that it doesn't have to be at a university; it can be at a community.
Yeah,
college
that's a really good
as
point.
well.
Yeah.
And I want to, before we move on, and I'll be throwing to you, Michelle, but I want to emphasize for the folks here, adjunct teaching, it's great to get in, but there was a book that came out about 5 to 7 years ago called In the Basement of the Academy. And a dirty secret about the many universities, they were hiring adjuncts because they could pay them cheaply, not advance them, and just have them kind of do the important work that oftentimes these very high ranked professors don't want to do. They don't want to teach English comp. They don't want to teach the general courses. They say we can just get adjuncts to do that, and just pay them cheap. But you want to aspire to get at least in at the assistant level, because now you are officially a member of the university community, and you will have to do all the things that I'm going to reference. My colleagues know that I have an obsession about what we're going to get into later, but you are at a minimum at the assistant level, you are a member of the university community, and you have to participate in everything that's expected of you. So I didn't want to let that slide. So Michelle?
Mhm. And yeah, and as we said, it varies from university or school to school. At Boston University, if you come in as a lecturer, you are a part of that community, um, you know, before you even get to assistant. So it really depends on where you are. So if you're a lecturer, you may get promoted to senior lecturer if you don't sort of meet the qualifications for assistant, or let's say you don't have a master's degree, you might be, but you're really accomplished in your field.
Mhm.
And you may have heard the term professor of the practice or professional practice. When Rain and I will talk more about our personal um, uh, path toward that title, but generally that means that you're focused on teaching a service. Now you may or may not publish books. Wayne is a book author. I have not written a book. I don't publish journal articles. I have a little bit different research, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I can still be an associate professor of the practice. And then this one, I had to call a friend of mine, Evelyn Hammonds, who teaches at Harvard, because I was like, what the heck does it mean when somebody's title has a whole bunch of stuff after it like yours? She is the Barbara Gutman Rosencraft Professor of History of Science. And I was like, what the heck does that mean? And she said, well, it means that some well-heeled donor has basically donated money to support her salary and that position. So it's generally considered, a very high honor to be an endowed professor. Who knew? I didn't know when I first came in.
Yes.
So let me
Oh,
no, go ahead.
by the way, there's a question about, should there be a standardized fee for adjuncts who teach? It's all over the place, and that's what I'm getting to about how universities play games. Oh my God, what I saw my former university, Hampton, pay adjuncts and was still paying was criminal. Okay, but usually the price, it could be anywhere from like 2,500 per class to 4,000 is kind of the range. But here's the problem with adjunct teaching. There are some PhDs out there who are teaching 4 or 5 classes a semester at multiple universities to try to make a living without any benefits. And there was a case of a woman professor, PhD, who was eating cat food to live. well, she taught her 4 or 5 classes at some prestigious New England universities, by the way. So yeah, but the pay is all over the place. So adjunct teaching is noble, and that's a good way to get in the door, but you should aspire to full time so you are full members of the community.
Well, if you want to teach full time, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I will tell you to also look at whether or not the adjuncts are unionized at that particular institution. I will say that they are at Boston University after a long struggle. So they have people actually advocating, for what they get paid.
Yeah, and that was a reaction to the horrible treatment
Yes.
these instructors were being put upon. Okay, very good.
So the last thing I want to mention about positions in academia, you may be thinking that you want to teach, but if you're at, a particular level, you may want to think about a job in administration. There are department chairs who I would say are the equivalent of a managing editor or a section editor who run the, whatever department they're in charge of. So the meetings, they schedule people, they're involved in the hiring and staffing process and troubleshooting, and they may or may not teach. It really depends on the department. And then finally, in that sort of rarefied space that Wayne was just talking about a few minutes ago, is the dean of that school. And, I would equate that with being an executive editor. So they're overseeing the entire operation, and they may have other disciplines, under them, including PR, advertising, film and television, in addition to journalism. And generally, they're not teaching, they're sort of the big picture, fundraising planner.
Yeah.
So
if you're a dean, a major part of your job is fundraising and the big picture. In fact, and I'll say this from my Hampton experience, I teach at a top public university now, but Hampton was a top private university. All the deans, we had 9 schools, and all the deans were responsible for raising 33 1/3% of their budget. And the president of the university was unforgiving if you came up short. I heard stories about deans who walked out of meetings with the president sobbing because they came up short.
Okay, Wayne, let's not scare them all off, because some of the
no. This is important. And the chairs are the non-commissioned officers of academia. They would be like master sergeants or maybe lieutenants, because then you have schools that may have, let's say if it was liberal arts, you may be working with 12 department chairs or so, teaching the different disciplines. But this is all important work. And then if you're a dean, if you're a chair, you're either going to be a 10 or 12-month employee, unlike a professor who is a 9 or 10-month employee usually. It's a full-time job, but it's a great job. Look, I haven't done it, but I went for training for it at LSU, because there was the belief there may come a time when you'll be tapped on the shoulder to give up those 2 months of summer off to be a chair or an assistant dean or even a dean. And I'm not trying to scare people, but it's a noble.
Well, and
honesty gets me in trouble sometimes, but it's a great job.
Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, let me add to that also that not all schools. So what you all were just sharing is our schools that have, say, a school of journalism or a school of communication. For example, at the University of Louisville, we do not have a school, so we don't have a dean of the communication area, but at the University of Kentucky, they do. And so we actually, our Department of Communication, no S, is housed, because we don't do journalism proper, meaning we don't have a journalism program. We offer journalism courses. We offer StratCom, strategic communication. We offer a number of courses, health communication. We offer a number of areas of expertise that then it's sort of like a liberal arts of sorts within in that department, but you get either a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts. And but at the University of Kentucky, they have that, they have the full journalism, the news, all of that. those different areas underneath their school. So that's a difference also. But the levels that you all are speaking of are, it again, what Michelle said cannot be stressed enough. Every school is different. And really what I would really advise is that if you can buddy up with someone that's in academe that can kind of walk you through or kind of take you, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this later, but I do want to just say, don't be overwhelmed about what's being shared at this particular point, because there are plenty of opportunities. It's just kind of knowing how to go about it, and first deciding what you want to do. Do you want to be full-time? Do you want to just have a little, extra money in your pocket, but do something that different, that you love, such as teaching? What are you looking to do? And then kind of go from there in terms of entering into academia.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see an essential question here from a listener. For media professionals who are looking to teach at the college level, the first question asked is, do you have a master's degree? For which positions or levels is a master's required? This is an essential question because often if you're going, okay, and Michelle Johnson has made the point, if you want to teach full-time or not. But if you want to teach full-time, it's probably a good idea to have a master's in media, in journalism or mass communication. I'm going to say this emphatically because the master's degree that keeps administrators on campus from blocking you at the door. There are good reasons for that. For accreditation, if you're an accredited journalism and mass communications program, the accreditors want to see professors with advanced degrees. Not necessarily that they all have to be doctoral people, but they want to see masters. If you have a bachelor's, that makes you kind of vulnerable. There's no way around it, because I've seen this with other institutions that have come up for their accreditation, and they started tossing people out the door because they wanted advanced degrees. Now, doctoral degrees, that's a different conversation. But yeah, it would be a good idea if you're going to really commit to teaching that Master of Arts or Master of Science in journalism or mass communication is going to probably be necessary. My colleagues can speak differently to that, but
no, I think you're exactly right. And so it used to be a time where you could possibly come in and have taught, and have a degree in a different field. And this is just not in communication, but in some of the other departments as well. But to Wayne's point, there is accreditation is very strict on this idea of making sure that folks are, have the credentials that they need to have to teach in different departments. And so in that case, what I would suggest is, while you're still working in the business, in the field, is maybe pursue a master's degree, maybe even if you can get a teaching assistant position, where maybe if you decide that you want to, stop working in the newsroom and afford to do that, maybe teach or go to pursue your master's degree and then apply for a teaching assistantship. That way you get kind of teaching on the job, and then you can, easily move into either a position at that institution if they have part-time teaching available, or it will make it easier for you to be able to go to a different school and do that. But yes, getting a degree in communication, some aspect of communication is vital for you to not be stopped at the door or have to, have trouble doing that. And let me say one last thing. There are schools that schools are now starting to offer professional degrees. So, for example, in the Department of Communication, you would get a degree that would put your experience, or to help you to move up in the areas and where you work. And so in those types of programs where they have professional master's degrees, there might be an opportunity for you to teach based on your expertise, or teach undergrad. But to solidify your opportunity to be able to move into that arena, you would want to have a master's degree.
And can
Okay,
I just add something really quickly? I'm going to be the outlier here for a minute and just say, look, go to the webpage for the faculty of the institution that you're thinking about teaching and look and see what degrees that they have. Because I will tell you, some of my colleagues only have a bachelor's degree. Some of them have master's degrees. We don't have anybody in our department who has a PhD. So it honestly is going to vary. I would not assume that you absolutely, I encourage you to get a master's degree, but if you're very accomplished in the field, you may be able to skip around that. I see people do it all the time, and primarily they're white people.
But it does vary from institution. I can tell you, and I won't name him, but we have this magnificent instructor, but he's so old school that he left college a semester early to enter the field. But because he's short of his bachelor's degree, he can't join our faculty. It's maddening. People make up their own rules. But let me stop here. I'm watching the clock, and Michelle, this is the point where you get to ask Dana, probably your favorite question.
I always want to know this because people ask me this. Listen, Dana, what do you wish people had told you before you started teaching? Like, what would you have wanted to know before getting into this? What was that transition like?
All of this.
All of this stuff that we're talking about now. Yes, I hear you.
All of this. No, I was really fortunate. So I was really fortunate, and I can't really say that the path that I took into teaching is something that someone could do today. But what I can say is that because of my experience in teaching, that I am very well versed in being able to help someone who wants to come this way. And so, one of the things that was very challenging for me is, and I knew grading was a part of it. I did know that. However, just juggling that with doing lesson plans and really, wanting to put your all into the course itself, spending time with students, those types of opportunities, I never really realized that, I could actually do. So along with teaching, I'm also an advisor to the students who are NABJ. I'm the NABJ student advisor or faculty advisor to the students, and also the advisor to the National Communication Association, Lambda Pi Eta, the honors organization for my department. So in serving in those roles, it's really allowed me to spend even more time with students. So just seeking out other opportunities that can come along, and just everything that I can possibly do in the field of teaching. So it's not just about being in the classroom.
Okay.
Wayne, do you want to chime in?
Yes, you know what? I'm watching the clock. Okay, I'm going to go to my favorite topic, the 33. Okay, folks who are listening, here's the secret about academia that you must know. And I'm going to say at a university, a college is a 4-year program, and they stick with that. But at a university, there are many layers here. I want to look you in the eye and say, teaching is only 1/3 of your job. I'm going to say that again. If you are a full-time professor at a university, teaching is 1/3 of your job. So you need to understand that clearly. So what else are you doing? So at most universities, it is 1/3 teaching. Your job is 1/3 teaching, 1/3 scholarly productivity or research, or another term at some places, grantsmanship. You better be bringing in the money. So teaching, scholarly productivity, or grantsmanship. The other is service. A big part of being a full-time professor is you're going to have to serve on school and university-wide committees to help in the running of the campus. You have, in a sense, you are a stakeholder. As one provost said, if you have tenure, you have property rights on the campus. Also, you're expected with your expertise, all the brain power that's on this panel and is looking in, you're expected to offer your service outside of the campus, regionally, nationally, internationally. This matters because if you want to go up for promotion or promotion and tenure, you have to have all of these pieces in place. And I say this emphatically because, like I said, or like it was said, I was the first faculty member who was not an administrator to be promoted to associate professor at Hampton. And then I was promoted to full. When I left, I was outranking my dean. Um, but I had done all those things, and I would tell my colleagues, I said, you're going to feel you're selfish if you do things other than just the teaching. But I said, but if you only teach and not try to get those other pieces in place, it will undermine you in the end when you if you want to advance in academia. It is very important you maintain that balance. Yes, I've just written 2 peer-reviewed academic books, but that puts me in a position where, and Michelle knows I get on my high horse with that. If any PhD professor tries to marginalize me, I will just look them in the eye and say, well, tell me about your books, bruh. Okay. And oftentimes and I love, they're 95% of the PhDs I see on college and universities are absolutely brilliant and awe-inspiring. But there's that small number that just talk a lot of junk because they're talking loud and saying nothing. They got nothing.
Can I be an outlier here once again and say I am a professor of the practice like you are?
Uh-huh.
Again, I don't do research. I'm not required to bring the money in. In fact, I've been teaching the BU for 11 years, and this week is the first time I actually applied for a grant for anything because the department supports us. So again, it really depends on where you are and what the system is. So I've been very happy, primarily focused on teaching and service.
Yes, and your institution is very flexible and comfortable with that, but others.
No, I understand.
Many others are not, and many others use it as a club to marginalize people. So you're in a perfect place.
I feel very fortunate, to be honest.
Yeah, but
I really do.
Other places are not.
And I think it's important. I think it's important, as Michelle is very fortunate at BU, and I said that I'm fortunate in my position. However, I still want to say that because I'm an instructor. So back to what Michelle was saying about the different levels. So I am a full-time instructor. I'm not a full professor. I'm not an assistant professor. I don't have to do research. I don't have to, but I still am treated. And I'm fortunate in this way. I have great colleagues. I have a great chair who really affords me the opportunity to have some flexibility in what I do. Other schools are, as Wayne mentioned, it's the strict, third, one third, one third, one third. Now I do have what is called a work plan, and so my academic work plan I negotiate every year because I'm a contract instructor, so I can be let go at will, but I have a work plan, and in that work plan, we do have that one third, and I can negotiate, for example, my research and do some other things, maybe teach another course or do something like that. But some schools are like what Michelle just mentioned, where it's a teaching school. So your time is spent teaching. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you might teach 4 classes. Some schools you teach 5 classes. So a semester if you're full time. So it really does vary. What we're doing today is simply giving you some ideas about what is possible if you want to transition into this area. There are no absolutes, and it just depends.
Dana, thank you, Dana. Michelle, someone said, "Is Boston U hiring?" But I want to say something about teaching loads.
Not at the moment.
I want to say something about teaching loads, and talking about that 30, one third, one third, one third. It's important for this reason. At most universities, 4 classes is a full load, and 4 classes with the other things you're asked to do is a strain. A lot of universities will do 3 classes because in Michelle's case, she's putting up 3 fingers, but she runs the award-winning Boston University News Service. So that's a release. You know, when you have a 4-class load, they call
Not a
that,
release.
well,
That's a regular load.
but in most places they call that release time.
Right.
But some places, many places, you might teach what's called a 4-3. So one semester it's 4 classes, the others 3 because you may be working on a grant or working on a journal article or book or so forth. There are some. Now, here's an interesting one. I had an interview many years ago. Now, I was not ready to even consider that, but I did the interview. This was at NYU, New York University's Carter School. The professors there have 2 loads. Two classes each semester. But the way they're set up, these professors are expected to write books. So they include people like my colleague James McBride, the amazing James McBride, who's written about 8 or 9 books. Pamela Newkirk. Every member of that faculty is usually working on books. So they do get released from a few classes, but it's not because someone's doing them a favor. It's just the mix. So that's an important question to ask. Okay, we are at 15 minutes, and I see that folks are full of comments. This is your time, folks, who are in. It looks pretty lively on the comment side. So let's hear from you, okay? Because this is an interactive session.
Yeah, there's a question on the screen there.
Yeah, I will speak to that. So yes. So one of the things that is increasingly a demand for and the students are demanding is our courses on videography, courses that are in the digital space. And so knowing how to or being able to translate your work into the classroom is very vital for that. The other piece is teaching online. And that is something, of course, with us being in COVID, a lot of schools have had to transition to that. And professors were in no way, some professors were in no way, they were just blindsided by it. They never taught online before. I was not one of those, thankfully. But, you know, there are some who were. And so if you can teach online, that also gives you kind of an edge into getting into that arena. But we have social media courses. So if you're able to teach in those specialized areas that are very much part of where we're going in the future, absolutely. Talking about cyber issues as it relates to journalism, all of that is very much something that is forward moving, and so you definitely increase your chances of being able to enter in if you have that.
I see my assistant dean and chair is on the call, and some of my colleagues. And when you mention online, here's something. And at some campuses, at least at ours, I am teaching people using online, but I'm not an online instructor. I'm teaching remotely. They've made a distinction. If you're teaching online, you have to be certified to teach online. And in fact, myself and colleagues are taking the training to be fully certified. But yes, we were thrown into the ocean last spring, and we've been teaching remotely, and we've been doing it again this semester. And probably many of you on the line may have noticed that maybe teaching this fall is a bit more structured than it was when we were abruptly told to teach online remotely in the middle of the last spring semester. So just wanted to point that out quickly.
And I just wanted to say I came into teaching from the digital side because I've been working in digital before I started teaching. So that's all I've ever taught. And it's been really interesting because it evolves over time. The things that I was teaching when I first started have totally shifted, throughout the last 11 years. So I am constantly trying to keep up to date with whatever the latest thing is. So it doesn't really, even if you get some training in some particular area, just understand that it's going to continue, to change. So, and that's the thing I love about it. I never know what I'm teaching necessarily semester to semester. So it's actually been kind of fun in that sense.
Do one of you want to take, now this is someone who I taught one semester at Thomas Nelson in Virginia, And I'd love to talk to this person, tell what happened to me there. But this person says, I'm an adjunct at Thomas Nelson Community College in Hampton, Virginia, and I'm teaching the Intro to Digital Photography. When I challenged the dean about my rate, she said that my experience did not factor into my rate, just the credits from my master's degree. Sounds ridiculous. Thoughts?
Well, that's why I think it's important that you negotiate that up front. You know, if and I'm not sure the questioner, I'm not sure if they meant what they mean when they say their experience prior to being hired, or their experience if they're renegotiating their salary while they are still in teaching. But before you go into any institution, it is to your benefit to really think about, what is it that I really want? What do I want from this experience? And then negotiate it up front. And don't be so thirsty that that you don't you know, really look at yourself and be proud of the work that you've done, and know that it will benefit some institutions. So just keep your options open, and try to negotiate as much as you can up front. Because let me just say this: in the time of COVID, there are a lot of budget cuts. There are a lot of folks who are trying to find ways to save money, and people are, you know, even being downsized. So it is really important that if you are teaching right now, to just kind of hold tight right now, because things are really, the unknown is real. And but when that time comes, just negotiate that. Just negotiate that.
Yeah,
Very
I agree.
important. A very important question here. Someone actually, they put it to Michelle. Do you design your own syllabi, or does BU have a uniform template? I'm going to jump in and say that you know, my experiences at two institutions, the dean wants uniformity with the syllabi. They don't want folks jumping around and freestyling, especially if they're the courses where you have multiple professors teaching the same course. Now, Professor Johnson and I, when we went to Columbia, there used to be what, 8 or 9 sections of that 5 or 6 credit reporting and writing class we had to take, and sometimes there was not quite, all great professors, but not quite the uniformity that should have been there. But at other universities, they you want to see that, show that uniformity. You also want to show it to the accreditors when they come. They don't want to see people just doing whatever they want. I mean, you have academic
can
freedom.
Can I answer Jackie's question now?
Yeah.
Because again, I'm an outlier. I do my own syllabi for every single one of my courses. And I do believe in some consistency, because I've been the course coordinator for the Intro Online Journalism course for years. And I would periodically get together with all the instructors. We would agree on a base level of things that we would all teach. But beyond that, it was up to them what they wanted to add to their syllabus. So there was some structure, but we were also free to diverge after we, met whatever those basic things were.
Absolutely.
So I love that.
But absolutely. But the thing about that, you have to have uniformity. I love music. So for instance, with the uniformity, everyone's playing the scales, but you have the freedom to solo like Coltrane. Okay. But everyone, there's still the basic foundation. Let's say you're teaching the basic or intermediate writing, or a service course like media literacy. There needs to be the trunk, but then you can branch out and do your thing.
Okay, Dana, you had a point. You were about to say something.
Yes, I was just going to say I'm the same as Michelle. I've been fortunate enough I get to do my own, and I get to create, set it up the way that I want. Now, if I want my courses, some of my courses, or one in particular that comes to mind, is what is called in our system, a cultural diversity course. So it counts for certain types of credits. That one had to go to a committee and had to be accepted and had to be a particular way. And other courses that I have will be going through that same rigor. But it's simply because of the multiple options for the students to be able to count that course for. Some of the courses that I teach, they start out because I've created them as special topic courses. So once again, the language and what happens depends. It all depends. The key is, if that's something that you think that you would want to do, then that's something you would ask in the interview. When you are interviewing with a particular school, you would say, is there an opportunity for me to create my own courses? Or since the question was directed at Michelle, getting with her and saying, Michelle, this is the type of course I wouldn't mind teaching. Work with her to put together a syllabus, and then that's something that you can present to the department that you want to pursue a position for. So again, there are just so many scenarios. The question—
I totally agree with that. We have hired adjuncts who have come to our chair with a syllabus already written. Folks who work for the Boston Globe who want to come in and teach entertainment journalism, they'll have that they have that all fleshed out before they even hit the door. So yeah, it's definitely worth, don't feel like you're going to be kind of put in a box. You may be able to get your foot in the door by being creative with whatever it is that you teach.
But you're in an ideal situation, and I just want to caution that the syllabus, places where I've worked, the syllabus is a contract with students, because students could come back and or parents, and say that you miseducated them, or you did not do what you promised. So I really respect the
it's a
freedom
contract.
you have,
it's a contract here too. We have that same, we operate under that same exact rule.
But have students ever tried to turn it against you?
No, they haven't, but we consider it a contract with them.
Well, Wayne, to your point, so what does have to be consistent in a course syllabus is your learning. You need to have student learning outcomes.
Learning outcomes. Yeah.
You need to make sure that whatever you assign to a student, that it matches, those outcomes. It matches what the help me out, Michelle. You have your student learning outcomes, and then you have what the competencies.
You have competencies. You also have assessment, which is now the new thing in accreditation. It's assessment is brand new. It's a new standard. And so I'm just putting that caution out there.
No, but Wayne, but assessment simply means an assignment. It can be an exam. It can be a project, some kind of media project that you're using to assess. If you use a media project, for example, you want to say which one of the competencies does this project. Which one does it cover? So matching, that's what has to be uniform.
And you're right, but I got to warn you again.
Yeah.
Programs are now just figuring out how to do that assessment piece, because it's brand new. It's brand new.
It looks like we have one last question, and we're getting tight on time. Mickey Turner is asking about teaching remotely. I'll just briefly say I love it because of what I do and what I teach. And most of my material was online already on my, on the WordPress sites. So it was a lot of work to get to transition. I will not lie, but I do like this format.
Okay. Ditto. I'm saying I enjoy it as well, but I also enjoy the classroom experience. I like the fact that I'm able to move in between those two environments. It's just what you like, but remote can be. It does have awesome possibilities, especially now with all the neat types of technology platforms, different platforms that are out there. You can do some fascinating, exciting things. But it's nothing like sometimes being in that classroom with the students and being able to really have activities and put them in groups and just kind of play that out in the classroom. But remote,
folks. Someone said we need more time, but unfortunately it's 5:59 and we're going to get cut off. So I want to say thank you to Michelle Johnson and to Dana Say. You were awesome. And this isn't the end. We're going to have to come back with the follow-up to this. Thanks, Facebook participants. Your questions were great, and we need to do more of this. This was a lively session, and thanks so much for being here.
And thank you to both Wayne and Dana for this great conversation. Appreciate it.
Okay. 6 o'clock. Good night, everyone. Enjoy dinner or whatever you're doing. And until next time.